Hello, I'm Eve from the University of Pennsylvania's English Language Programs, and today we're talking about the Duolingo English Test, the DET. In this video, we're going to talk about the question type, listen and type. Here's our agenda. We'll take a look at an example of this question type. Then we'll talk about tips and strategies to prepare for this type of question and for when you're completing this type of question on the test. Finally, we'll practice the listen and type question. First, let's take a look at an example. This is what the listen and type question looks like on the DET. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see a timer. You, as the test taker, have a minute to complete this task. In the middle, in larger font, you'll see the directions. Type the statement that you hear. You can see a large speaker button in orange, and then next to it a text box for you to type your response. Below the text box, you can see how many times you can replay the audio. And finally, in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see this button that says Next, which you should only complete when you're done. Now, let's take a look at what this question is actually asking you to do. Let's start with the directions. Type the statement that you hear. You can hear the statement up to 3 times. Make sure you use all of your replays, even if it's just to check your work. The speaker will only say one sentence, but he or she will be speaking at a natural or regular pace. This question type measures your ability to identify individual words and then hold them in your memory long enough to type them out. And of course, spelling counts. The listen and type question relates to a person's ability to comprehend spoken language and also potentially participate in a conversation. And that's why this question type is included in both the comprehension and conversation subscores. The listen and type question can be really challenging because it relies heavily on your listening, writing, grammar, and memory skills. So here are a few tips to tackle this type of question before the test. Bulk up on your listening practice. You can use podcasts, TV, movies, or broadcast news to practice writing a sentence down that you hear. This is particularly helpful if you're listening to something that you can pause and rewind and play again. Use closed captioning to check your work. There are also many dictation activities available online, and those activities in particular can help you prepare for this type of question. Practice typing in a word processing program because it will help you see any spelling mistakes. Also, make sure to practice punctuation rules. At the end of a statement, always include a period. There may or may not be a comma in the sentence, and you'll need to know when commas are used. For example, when you have a sentence that starts with a dependent clause, like, if it rains, I'll stay home, a comma will separate the dependent clause from the main clause. Now, if the clauses are switched, I'll stay home, if it rains, no commas are necessary. So it's important to know when and when not to use a comma for this type of question. Now, let's look at some tips and strategies for when you get this type of question on the test. Again, it's important to capitalize the first letter of a sentence. You cannot get full marks for this question type without proper capitalization and punctuation. Also, listen for reduced speech like contractions. The speaker is using a natural or regular pace, which means there could be reductions like its, theirs. Also, some words become shorter in sound when spoken. For example, I should have called before I left. I should have called before I left. If I were saying this in a clearer way, it would sound like I should have called. But when I'm speaking naturally, should have can sound like should of. It's important to be familiar with these types of shortened speech. Also, listen for verb endings like ing or ed, and for plurals like s or es. Being familiar with these spelling rules, particularly the past tense and plural, can be really helpful for this type of question. It's a good idea to type what you hear and then replay the recording to check your work. So try to save one replay for these purposes. These are just a few strategies to help you. Now let's practice. I will read a sentence 3 times. Practice writing or typing what I say. Then on the next slide, I'll show you the sentence. Here's the sentence. The students visited a museum to learn about earthquakes, dinosaurs, and the solar system. Second time. The students visited a museum to learn about earthquakes, dinosaurs, and the solar system. Final time. The students visited a museum to learn about earthquakes, dinosaurs, and the solar system. Okay. Here's the right answer. How'd you do? Did you start the sentence with a capital letter? Did you end with a period? How was your spelling? Were you able to spell most of the words correctly? How about your use of commas? Were you able to use commas correctly in the list of museum attractions? Now you can practice more with this type of question and other types of questions on the DET website. Thanks for checking out this video about the listen and type question type. You can find more videos like this one on the Penn ELP YouTube channel.